My name is Matheus Montanari. I'm a PhD candidate in the University of São Paulo in Brazil, under the supervision of Professor Gilberto Prado. And right now I'm working as an invited researcher at the Polytechnic University of Valencia in Spain. Is my presentation there? Sorry.
Oui, normalement, je vois l'équipe qui est en train de travailler dessus.
Okay. So I'll start without it. The work I'll be presenting today, it's called Ecologies of Thought, Generative Art as a Collaborative Methodology with Guarani Kaiowá Indigenous Communities. And as you can see, the gigantic title already leaves very little to the imagination. It's basically an abstract. Do we have it?
Les choses vont arriver, elles arrivent toujours.
Okay.
Yes, just a minute of patience. On its way.
Not yet. Not yet. Don't press the button.
Okay.
So, who are you, Matheus?
Well,
where do you come from? It's okay.
I come from São Paulo, Brazil, and well, oh, perfect.
Oh,
Thank you
sorry.
very much. So yes. Okay, so the project has a transdisciplinary and international composition. It started with a partnership with the Great Assembly of Guarani and Kaiowá Women and the Multimedia Anthropology Lab at University College London, which I'm a member of as well. And thankfully to the UCL Global Engagement Fund, we were able to collaborate with several institutions, and we brought together the shamans, the indigenous community video makers, anthropologists, artists, and biologists to investigate some of the complex ecological relations present in the Guarani and Kaiowá cosmology. And working with these diversities of worldviews and knowledge production was at the same time very exciting, but a big challenge. So in order to work with that, we decided to use artistic creation as a mean for creating these contact zones without homogenizing this variety of encounters. So a little bit about the Guarani and Kaiowá. They are two indigenous groups of the same family trunk. They are the second largest indigenous populations of Brazil and the biggest outside of the Amazon forest. They are around 63.5 thousand people and live mostly in the state of Mato Grosso do Sul in Brazil, where you can see in red. They have a strong territorial bond, both physical and spiritual, which guides their struggle to reclaim their land on a especially organized way since the large assemblies beginning in 1979 called Atiguaçu. And these articulations occur mainly between the religious leaders, Nyanderus and Nyandesis, since the community considers that the simultaneous performance of the religious ritual is fundamental to recover the dialogue with the invisible beings and guardians of the ancient Tecohas, so that is to recover the historical territories of the people. It is also fundamental to recover the extra-human relations developed in their territories, whether they are animal, vegetable, or spiritual. And the community is constantly under attack in this region because it is dominated by the agribusiness and face severe ecological destruction due to the enormous monoculture plantations, especially corn and soy, and they rely on huge amounts of pesticides and threaten the local biodiversity. They are suffocated in small pieces of land surrounded by the monoculture plantations, which contaminate and poison their own gardens, called roças. And these gardens are a central part of the Guarani and Kaiowá way of being, as are their traditional prayer houses, which are constantly being criminally burned, which you can see in this video. And in this context, the Multimedia Anthropology Lab proposed to create a collaborative Guarani and Kaiowá virtual museum to preserve their heritage without the need to take any objects out of the territory, while also granting them total access and curatorial power. And in this sense, the community, and especially the shamans, decide what should be in the museum and how it should be displayed or interacted with. And the museum is the bigger project that allowed the Ecologies of Thought and its artistic experimentations, because we wondered how to maintain a Guarani and Kaiowá cosmotechnical fidelity in the museum, that is, how to enable the indigenous cosmology and its technologies, not only to inhabit the virtual space, but to build it as a Guarani and Kaiowá territory. So we realized we would need new methodologies to work with these questions, and that's where the Ecologies of Thought project was born. To our surprise, in the first test of the museum with the virtual reality headsets, 2 shamans saw spirits in the virtual space. And we were surprised because far from seeking representation of the spirits or the cosmology, we aimed to construct sensorial experiences that would allow these discussions. So when they saw the spirits in the digital space, we realized that the digital affordances were richer than we anticipated. As the Guarani and Kaiowá cosmology is very complex, is learning of a lifetime with chants and stories that can last for entire days. And being aware of this and of our limitations, both in understanding and exposing this kind of knowledge, while also knowing the importance of not simplifying it, we proposed a series of generative art experiments, and these experiments embrace complexity, recursivity, and non-linearity, just like the Guarani and Kaiowá cosmology. So according to the Kaiowá myth, the deity Jacairá is responsible for the creation of the first food garden, and there Jacairá created the white corn, which is at the top of the food hierarchy, and from it all other agricultural products. And therefore, Jacairá and white corn are responsible for the creation and maintenance of almost all food and thus life on Earth. And this specific type of corn is currently in danger of extinction due to the environmental threats it suffers, the heavy usage of pesticides in the GMO corn plantations that surround the community, and the consequences of climate change in the region. So our first experiment deals with this extra-human ecology. In one of our ethnographic sessions, we learned that, this is not yet. Our first experiment deals with this extra-human ecology. In one of our ethnographic sessions, we learned that according to the Guarani and Kaiowá cosmology, doesn't work. Okay, let's pause it. The corn has its own sound, and that is not audible to all people. However, there is a specific moment when the sound of the corn can be heard by everyone. And they told us that when the corn is still green, begins to mature, and get ready for harvest, it produces a smell that attracts a bee so that the bee can make the sound of the corn, warning the cultivator that it's almost time to harvest. And as talking about the white corn is also talking about the beginning of life and the food that sustains it. This pre-harvest moment, when the bee is attracted to the corn to make its sounds, seemed emblematic to investigate an instant of the creation of the world, according to the Guarani and Kaiowá cosmology, since this is a communication between plant, animal, human, and spirit. So to continue this investigation, we developed a generative art experiment using Touch Designer. We started with the image of a white cornfield before the harvest and analyzed the light incidence in its different areas. And from this data analysis, we created a relief map that was applied to an ellipse for the construction of a terrain. The darker areas of the image created depressions and the lighter areas elevations. And finally, we added 2 noise layers, one algorithmic and another from the sound analysis of the frequencies produced by the bees. And the sound frequencies analysis control the algorithmic noise, which generates motion in the terrain. And with that, we exported a 360 video for the VR headsets. And in this way, we developed a virtual reality experience in which the ecological relationship between the corn and the bee produces the creation of a generative world based on the analysis of image and sound data from the field, guided by the Guarani and Kaiowá cosmology. And even without a naturalistic production of the image, and perhaps precisely because of this, the community approved the experiment. And once the step-by-step construction of the generative program was presented, there was consensus that the experiment had through Guarani and Kaiowá characteristic mixed with non-indigenous technology. And thus we were able to bring together poetic and technical processes to propose a mixture of knowledges that beyond an explanation or representation of one form of knowledge into another develops an experience of its own. And this allows us to fight an idealized naturalistic representation of indigenous culture, which fails to understand indigenous thought and technologies as valid ways to build and think of a cosmotechnic for our time. So collaboration, interdisciplinarity, and investigation of creative processes, rather than the proposition of representations, allow us to arrive at questions related to the level of existence, so that in the Anthropocenic era of the absence of futures, we can compose a cosmotechnique for a viable virtual and actual reality based on more than human relations. And if you'd like to know more about the project, here are some links. And I would like to thank and acknowledge an incredible team that collaborated in this project, especially the Nyanderus and Nyandesis. Thank you so much. Atimapara.
Merci Matheus. S'il y a une question.
Thank you very much. We have time for a single question in the room. We have a gentleman over there. We can get a microphone to you. In fact, I can just give you mine.
It's amazing presentation. I was wondering, in including the indigenous people in your decision making, first with the museum, you validated in a sense whether or not, or chose that elements that were in the museum, if I remember correctly. And in the second part, you validated the model and the image, the artwork. You validated in some sense with them. How did you include them further in the actual decision making, or in the actual artistic decisions, or any other decisions for that matter?
Yes, so we always start with a prototype of the things that we can do, and then they decide what we do next. So with the 3D models, for example, we created a field that we saw on the field and showed to them, they reviewed, and then they asked for the new ones. And we collaborate with the video makers in the community who already have the knowledge to produce photographs and videos, so we can work with photogrammetry. And for this specific experiment with the virtual reality, we created a program so they could add different images and sounds that they took and recorded. And those were a bit of the videos that were going on. I just didn't talk much about it because of the time, but we usually present some kind of idea, and then even the programming of the touch designer experience were done in collaboration with them, with the younger members of the community who participated in the whole process.